Welcome to the Luna Holistic Podcast. I'm your host, Geneva Robbins, and every month on this podcast, we'll talk about Reiki, as well as answering your questions on all things spiritual. We are gratefully located in Calgary in Treaty 7 territory. Thank you all and welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to the Luna Holistic Podcast. Today, we'll be talking about how do you deal with resistance or being in that negative feedback loop of behavior where you can't move forward, you can't move back, you're doing things that are not beneficial and resisting doing the things that would actually get you moving. And today I have Angela Hogeveen with me. Hi, Angela.
Hi, Geneva.
Good to have you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Thanks for joining me. This is a big topic. I know it affects a lot of people and can cause quite a bit of inner and outer world turmoil when we're stuck in that resistance where you want to do the positive thing, but it's just really hard to get there. There's a way that you had phrased it. You remember how you said it?
So, yeah, it's why do we do the things we don't really want to do and don't do the things we really want to do?
Yeah, totally. Which I understand it when you say it, but if I was to say it, I would stumble. But yeah, it is. It's one of those like tricky concepts for sure. It can be a really sticky and not nice place to be in. So we're going to be chatting about that this go around. We'll start like we always do with a little mini micro meditation. So just our collective breath of gratitude. So if you're listening, you can gently close your eyes unless you're driving heavy machinery, then don't. Keep your eyes open. And otherwise, I invite you to close your eyes and just take a giant sigh of relief. And that no matter where you are in your relationship with moving forward or being stuck in resistance or a negative feedback loop, just honor all of it and just let it all go with a big sigh of relief. Where you are is 100% okay. You can only be where you are. And then become aware of the energy below your feet. Noticing that energy extend down like a beam of light deep into the earth and feeling that vast connection of supportive energy below you. Just that space directly below you completely belongs to you. And send that energy of gratitude for the earth that is always supporting all of your needs. The land, the water, the trees, all of the plant and animal life in your vicinity. Just become aware of all of the living things. And send a ripple of gratitude into that living world. And feel that gratitude flow back to you, filling you up. And know that it's all okay and you're doing so very well. Wonderful. You can gently open your eyes. Thank you for that. How'd that go for you, Angela?
Nice. It's always nice. Even, when there's short little meditations, it's just, yeah, every little bit helps.
I agree. I agree. Which is one of my main strategies when I'm in a state of resistance is to come back to the breath, coming back to true and genuine and very simple and universal forms of gratitude. For me, it's like sometimes if I'm stuck in a spot, I'll just be focused on everything that's going wrong and not focused on all of the things that I'm taking for granted that are going so incredibly well. Like, I live in a nice area. I have a wonderful, loving family. I've got trees outside my window that are beautiful. The air is fresh. I have clean water piped in directly to my home, and all I have to do is turn on a tap and it's there. Like really, really simple, like things. Sometimes I like to come back to this idea of like being grateful that I know how to read and write. Just just simple gratitude for how blessed I am to be literate. That's it, and how much benefits has come into my life because I lived in a family and a culture that valued literacy. And so I learned how to read so early in life, like really, really simple, simple, simple basics of existence, but not actually all that simple when you kind of look out beyond your own little, you know, sphere of the world, not to compare anything, anybody else's struggle with yours, but just sort of being really like heaping gratitude for all of the blessings that are active, and that can kind of help me. For me, that's one of my strategies is to come back to like what is working, what is working and what can I do to start shifting, transforming, and sort of letting it all move and flow. So, yeah. How does that sit with you?
We can get so caught up in the minutia of every day and what's not working,
Mhm.
and that resistance of, well, I should be eating better, I should be getting more sleep, I should be exercising, and I'm not. And then it's this very can be this very fast negative downward spiral. I think what you said is so important because, yeah, once we get out of that minutia kind of mindset and look at the big picture, and you're right, like we have so much to be grateful for.
Mhm.
But it's hard to focus on that when we have that resistance mindset and that we're not doing what we really want to do. There's
Yeah.
that saying that life is very simple, it's just not easy.
Right. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Hmm.
And when you were talking about that, that made me really think about just how much pressure can be with resistance. That we have this like pusher sort of pushing us from behind, like, get to it. And it's kind of trying to whip you into doing something that you actually genuinely like doing and will feel good doing. So there's like this pressure coming from behind, so they're pushing us forward. And then there's this pressure in front of us, which is like, no, 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 don't do that thing that is like truly joyful. Go do the thing that is a quick fix. Right. So it's like, that's what I notice is that I will delay or put off true forms of joy, like reading a book, because I have to, you know, do all the work first before I can do fun things.
Hmm.
And
Yep.
then in my resistance to just doing drudgery and work, which isn't fun, especially if it's like, no, you have to be serious about it, and there's all of this pressure behind it. You have to do all of the things you don't like first before you can do the true, joyful, nourishing thing. And then my inner teenager kicks up a fuss and rebels against that idea. And then I just go and do like cheap, easy, fast. And, so it's like I will trade a true source of joy for a temporary fix when I get stuck in that resistance mindset. So it's like, no, I won't do 5 minutes of yoga because I have all this work to do. So, but then I have all this work to do and it's overwhelming. So instead, I'm going to watch 5 hours of Netflix.
Mm-hmm,
It's
mm-hmm.
like, and so it's like trading to true and deep and meaningful, nourishing joy for a temporary fix. And then it reinforces. And that's what I find is like, if you get in that loop, it's self reinforcing and it's negative, right? Because it's like, then you've watched this 5 hours of Netflix, and then it gives your inner critic all this, thing of to beat you up about it. And when I've
Ammunition.
ammunition, and then you're like, hey, tomorrow I'm really gonna do the thing. And I was like, oh, but I have all this work to do first. So then I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna pressure myself, which might work for a day or two. Like sometimes you can push through and just plow through it and get to it. And other times you can't, right? Like other times it doesn't work that way and it just ends up getting worse and worse and worse. And so I always think when the pattern is harsh, what we need is gentleness and we need comfort and we need to soften into this space where we have been is okay. It's okay to be in a point of resistance because usually resistance, like true resistance, only pops up when the thing that we want to do, like meditation, walking, fixing healthy meals, all of those things are actually really nourishing and positive. We feel resistance the most, or it's the most troublesome for us when the thing that we want to do can actually has the potential for changing us. There's a change in there. And the ego mind is afraid of change. Anything unfamiliar is regarded as fearful. And that's just sort of like our base brain little like prey mentality. Like, don't go out into danger. You will get eaten. Anything new is dangerous. Don't go out there. And so it's almost like this over hyperactive protective mechanism that gets engaged to try to keep us from change, even if it's positive and nourishing change. And then it can keep us stuck in the same place forever. Because the thing the ego wants the most is to keep you completely safe where it can see you at all times, which is stay exactly where you are and don't change anything. But as soon as we get there, then we feel stagnant and we feel like nothing's moving forward and we start craving change. We want and desire change. We know that life would be better if we took action that would create change. But if that action that creates change is connected to fear, it's just a new novel experience, which is a fearful enough anxiety right there. Or if we have a pattern where every time we move forward, we get belittled, abused, or criticized by the world. And so then we fear that, sort of we've associated true joyfulness and shining our light and being bright with pain. So then, of course, that protective part of our consciousness is like, don't shine. Don't do things that light you up. Don't do things that connect you to your true, lasting, sustaining sources of happiness and growth. Just stay the same. That's comply with what the dominant energy you see, usually negative, thinks, live up to the very low standard, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. There is almost a feeling of safety staying
Mm-hmm.
small,
Mm-hmm.
which
Yeah.
I think pretty much what you said is, yeah, if we stay the same, stay, as I say, small and don't make these big changes, then
Yeah.
according to the ego,
Yeah.
there's a feeling of safety.
Yeah. But the interesting thing is that it actually isn't safe. It isn't safe to stay where you are. The ego doesn't know that though. The true safety lies in the deep knowing and wisdom inside your heart, in your soul, in your spirit. The part of you that's eternal is the part that knows what to do and isn't afraid of change. In fact, is the one that's pushing for it. So you've got this sort of push and pull with your like deep knowing inside your soul, which is like, this is the way, this is your way, this is your path, and this is your light. And then this, almost like animalistic part of survival part of your consciousness, which is like, don't do anything scary, shrink your comfort zone until you're standing on a dime. Never leave your house. Never try anything new. Don't do anything that might ever upset anybody, which is like, don't create, don't speak, don't record a podcast, don't write your book, don't do anything is the way to feel safe. But what ends up happening is that all that ends up happening is that our life, when we stop stretching that comfort zone, the comfort zone will shrink so much that it becomes like a straitjacket. It becomes so restrictive and so small that then everything we do creates a wave of fear and panic, and then our lives become very restricted and very uninteresting, and we get bored with ourselves, and then in that state of boredom, we start numbing and avoiding. It's a very painful place to be. One of my favorite quotes by Anais Nin is, and the day came when the risk to remain tight in the bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. And I love that a lot because it's been really comforting thing as I've been, doing this work to share this work. It's put me outside of my comfort zone more times than I can name. It just is a continual stretching. I kind of think of it as like sort of a balloon stretch where you can like that comfort zone can expand, but only when you stretch out a bit, and the energy of stretching out a bit past that, so like to expand, not past your comfort zone, but to expand your comfort zone. The energy that can reliably drive that is one of compassion, empathy, and connecting to the soulful space. Because the soul is unafraid. There's a part of you that knows that you've got support, connection, and flow from the universe, that knows what to do, that has a creative idea that you can like, sometimes you can get there if you tap into enthusiasm or curiosity. It becomes, instead of a scary thing, you can tap into the sense of adventure of like, ooh, what's out there? Let's go look, and you become almost like in that playful, childlike space where it can be a little bit less pressure that everything you do works out perfectly, and more of this creative, fun, playful, like, let's find out, like we always start checking it against, your intellect, which is like, you're not going to do things that are truly risky, and you're not going to, jump off bridges or anything, or like do base jumping with no parachute. Like you're going to make sure that you are taking, healthy and well-placed risks based on what your capacity is and what your awareness is. You're going to do things that are actually, to be safe, right? Like we don't need to be afraid of doing a 5-minute journaling exercise, because we know like nothing's going to happen. It's okay. Like, putting pen to paper is not a life-threatening activity, and sharing your work is not a life-threatening activity. It's not, at least not anymore,
Right.
So,
So, and yes, we definitely, or I should say, I can only speak for myself, know that on one level, but
Hmm.
yet there's still that resistance, still that voice saying, nah, I don't think you should do that. And let's go, as you
Hmm.
say, watch Netflix or, scroll online.
Yeah.
And then you have resistance to the resistance.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
it's just this very confusing, uncomfortable feeling. That's something that I think I get stuck in, is trying to figure out the why. Why do I have such resistance to this thing? And then I get so caught up in that it leads to being still stuck, to staying in that stuckness because I
It's
can't
almost
figure out
like
the why.
a little bit of a distraction as well,
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes knowing why can help, you know, but it's enough to change the behavior without knowing why, right? And that sometimes you will fill in that question in hindsight. Oh, I know what I was doing now that I'm out of the loop. And that maybe, the Albert Einstein quote, which is like, you can't solve a problem with the same mindset that created it. So it's like when you're in resistance, you might not be able to figure out why you're in resistance. You might only be able to figure it out once you get out of it. And for me, the way I loosen this whole pattern, I think the whole pattern is driven by shame and pressure, or the pressures that shame puts on us. So there's sort of these two tapes. So one is never good enough. So doesn't matter, that shame voice, if you did get to bed early one night, it'll be like you only got to bed early one night and you're still tired. So it doesn't matter that went to bed early that one night. Why go to bed early? You're missing out on all the fun, right? So it'll play its tricks. And then the other shame voice, and this all comes from Brene Brown. Wonderful. If you want to like dive into that, there's some phenomenal books on braving the wilderness is one of my favorites of hers. And the other shame voice is, if you can get past never good enough or never enough, then it's, who do you think you are? Who do you think you are to be like treating yourself lovely? Do you think you're the queen? It's like, you're not allowed to feel good, or you're not allowed to be better than someone else, or you're not allowed to have success or joy or good things. You're not deserving or worthy of that goodness, that good feeling that would come from the thing, because you have to pay a penance for all of those other times that you stayed up too late. The reason it doesn't make sense is because it doesn't make sense. It's not a logical thought, but it is a thought we hold. And so sometimes we can clear the negative thinking loops with thinking. And usually it's about questioning our thoughts. So I'm a big fan of The Work by Byron Katie, where it's a whole process. There's a spreadsheet. We'll put the link to that in the show notes for you. And it's a whole process of basically questioning your thoughts. Like, is this a true thought? Is it actually real? So if you catch yourself thinking a particular way or feeling resistance, like, I don't want to meditate. It's like, I know I should. Should is a key word of should. If you're saying should to yourself, that's the shame word, right? I should do that. Sometimes even just changing it from should to could, or I might, or I can choose to, can soften. Is like, I could choose to go to bed early, or I could choose not to. I get to choose. And it just lightens it up a little bit. But then even just coming back to that, that work process is like, is that thought real? Is it true? And can I absolutely know it's true? So if there is a competing thought, I should get to bed early, getting to bed early doesn't make me less tired. Those are two competing thoughts that can keep you stuck. over and over and over again. And then you're not changing any behavior that might actually matter. Right. And maybe it is true going to bed early might not make that person feel better because maybe they need to go to a sleep doctor,
Mm.
like maybe they need a CPAP machine, and they're snoring all night and they're not actually getting true rest. But resistance will stop us from even going to that next step, because if we feel like we're not worthy of rest, it's like we're not allowed to rest, or that it's not, it's too nice, and that we have to beat ourselves up for like kind of the transgressions of the past, if we're holding ourselves in that state of self-punishment, just noticing if that's part of it. Or am I punishing myself? Am I delaying
Mhm.
true joy and then beating myself up because I think I've done something wrong, or I feel like I'm bad, which is all shame. And the only way I feel that you can get out of shame is with empathy. And that comes from Brene Brown. So, and it's that self-empathy and being like truly kind and compassionate and saying to yourself what you would say to a friend. So if a friend had come to you, somebody you love, somebody you think the world of, they're just doing their best. They're just trying to live their life. They're not trying to do anything, and you would say, it's okay. So then we say that to ourselves, it's okay. Yeah, it sucks to be in resistance. It hurts a lot, but it's okay that you've been there. It's like, take it easy. It's fine. It's fine. This pattern you're in is just a pattern. There's lots of reasons for it. It doesn't matter too much what the reason is. Just be gentle with the whole thing. So I kind of sort of jotted down some notes of like the steps involved. So the first thing is noticing that you're in a state of resistance is the hardest part. That's 90% of the work. So if you're in a state of resistance and you don't notice it, that's when we get into these unconscious loops. So we're stuck in a pattern that we're not even questioning that we could change it at all. And that's really hard to move through. If you're unaware of where things need to shift, then you can't change it. So noticing is like 90% of the work, but it's also a painful part of the process because you're noticing the pattern, but you're still stuck in the pattern. So the first step is just becoming aware and then being gentle, like using mindfulness and presence practice, to just sort of like, I think I'm in resistance. Thank you. And then just being very gentle to the part of you that's not gentle with you. So if we fight shame, if we shame, if we try to use that pushing and pulling and that willpower and forcing, it just feeds it, it gets stronger. But if we're kind to the part that's not kind, if we give light, energy, and grace to that part of us that is not any of those things, then it stops being such a big monster. And to me, it almost looks like it shrinks down to the size of a child, usually you as a child. And then we can go, oh, I see you. You must be hurting a lot. It's okay. I'm here for you. It's going to be okay now. So you let like kind of the inner adult nurture the inner child and reassure it as like, yeah, moving forward is scary, but we'll do it together and we'll just do it in little bits.
I think you're totally right. But I think it can also, that being kind to our shame can maybe sometimes feel counterintuitive. It's like we're
Mm-hmm.
giving in
Yeah.
because I think even like society, it's like you got to fight through it, you got to plow through it, just be
Mm-hmm.
strong and do it. So I think even just that portion, that being kind to ourselves, can be very uncomfortable.
There's an app called WYSA, WYSA, and there's a couple of other ones that are cognitive behavioral therapy apps, and is another way of sort of questioning that black and white thinking. and that there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And if I'm not perfect at the right way, then I'm a complete failure. And again, it loops back to shame. Like shame doesn't clear with more shame, because if it did, then we'd be out of it and we wouldn't be in resistance. So if it actually worked and it was a successful strategy, then and a long-term successful strategy, because like being able to, muscle your way through a couple of days isn't the same as a true lifestyle nourishing change. There is a book called The Kindness Method, I believe, by Sharu Imzadi. And she is an addictions counselor, but it's great for any pattern that you want to clear. And she advocates and she uses it all of the time to help people clear some pretty heavy, like addictions to heroin and opiates. Like it's substantial work that she's doing, and the compulsion to use these strong substances to numb that strong pain is very, very, like, it's physiological. It's like your brain has changed in using the substances. And so she uses this kindness method, and it's all about being truly kind, not giving in. Giving in is not the same as being kind, right? Being kind is a different frequency. There's a whole chapter of kindness in my book, The Secret Art of Happiness. So you can kind of go through that if you're struggling with kindness and self-kindness, is that it's not about saying, oh, it doesn't matter, and just sort of, it's fine, like it's about truly witnessing the pain that's part of the pattern and making a space that is compassionate, aware, and comfortable. It's not about numbing or avoiding the pain in the pattern. It's about making space for it and truly witnessing it. I see what I'm doing, and this hurts. And I don't like that it hurts. So I'm going to apply a balm to what hurts. That's the first part, is kindness. We don't stop just with the feeling of kindness, which would not satisfy that pusher part of us anyway, which is like, I see the pain in this painful loop, and I see all of the aspects of it. I see that it's got this endless beginning and end, and that it's self-reinforcing. I can see it. So the noticing of it is a powerful first step, because you can't begin to change it until you begin to see it. And then you can practice, in Buddhism, it's called sort of deep looking and deep listening. So turning that inward to really look and listen at when I spot myself in a moment of resistance where there's something really beautiful and joyful, and that I know is actually good and nourishing for me, and I choose not to do it. I'm just going to notice those moments. I'm just going to spend a day where I'm not actually trying to change the pattern. I'm just going to like go neutral with it. So sometimes it's like, if you're in a strongly negative pattern, if you can shift into neutral and just go, I am a human being doing my best at life. It's like, that is a completely true statement. And I have a longing for things to get better, like most people, right? So it's this empathy, like applying the same, for compassion to be true compassion, it has to be equal inside and out. So if you imagine a friend coming to you with whatever negative loop pattern and resistance you were in, would you tell them, yeah, you are a lazy POS and you really should get back to work, and I can't believe you did that, like that's horrible? They wouldn't be your friend for very long, or I hope they wouldn't. You'd jettison them. But if you could imagine, if a friend came to me with this, what would I say? Or, and usually you would say, hey, yeah, that really sucks. That really, really sucks. But it's okay that you're there. And you can just start with like something small. What if you just did something really, really tiny? That's probably what you would whatever advice you would give to another, take your own good advice. And what if you had the ability to say that to yourself? And guess what? If you can say it to another person, you can say it to yourself. The inner critic won't like that at all. Usually, when we show the inner critic kindness, it kicks up a temper tantrum fuss because it's like, I don't want your empathy. I want your rage and I want more shame because shame feeds me. So we just notice its game and we notice that the same part of us that's pushing us to go is the identical part that's stopping us from going. And we get sort of stuck in this middle ground. And so then we can stay in that safe zone forever and never change. And so we just sort of spot the whole thing and we're gentle with it. Just being gentle with it is the first step. And then do something that's going to tap you into the energy below the mind, which is the deeper core of you. So tapping in, I believe like, so if the pattern is stuck in this sort of fear and shame, then we have to go to the opposite frequency, which is like courage and gentleness and compassion. And for me, that lives in my heart. I feel that energy inside me when I do meditation, when I notice it and when I look for it. And that energy transcends a whole pile of things. It brings in wisdom, it brings in insight, it's aligned with that compassionate space. And so it's almost like we stop the arguing and we drop out of it for a moment. One of the things that you can do is even just becoming aware of spatial relationships in your body. So the left brain is the thinky part and the right brain is the feely part, so the right brain helps us often with creativity and energy, but it also helps us understand spatial relationships between objects. The left brain measures things with the ruler and counts, and makes things abstract. It wants to put everything into a box and give it a label and a name. The right brain is spacious, it's expansive, it taps us into the connectedness of us and the entirety of the universe. And a really quick way of getting into that spatial awareness is to think about, can I imagine the distance between my eyes? Can I visualize the volume behind my eyes? Can I imagine the space, the distance between my hands and my feet, the volume within my hands, the volume within my chest, the energy of light within my heart? So just even thinking about different spatial relationships, can I imagine the volume of my aura or the space around my body that's clear and light and bright? And even that will start shifting you away from that critical mind and into this sort of spacious, clear awareness where thinking can sort of stop. It helps you get into a state of presence and flow. And that's a really quick thing you can do, sort of even while you're on your phone, because you're looking at your hands. You're like, can I imagine the volume of space in my hands or the energy within my thumbs? Can I imagine the energy in my big toe? Can I notice the energy in my little toe? The connection that's flowing between my feet and the earth? What about the distance between me and the nearest wild animal I love? So for me, I keep seeing deer show up in these like beautiful, magical times. Is like, can I imagine right where I'm sitting, the distance between me and my nearest neighbor deer or an owl, right? Whatever sort of thing you would be like, if you saw and you walked outside and you saw this beautiful animal and you'd be like, oh, it's one of those, right? Like there is a distance and it's not a linear. So it's a question that the left brain can answer. I mean, I can attempt to answer it analytically, but energetically, your heart knows that answer. You can start feeling it. The really cool thing is that you actually start seeing these animals when you do this work. And you're like, which is actually really helpful when you're driving at night, because then you're like, I think I need to slow down because I feel my nearest neighbor deer is in the ditch right there. So I'm going to slow down. And oh, look, they looked at me. There it is. So noticing when you're in a state of resistance, noticing with gentleness, coming back to a few minutes of meditation, and then do a tiny motion forward right in that moment. And I like to set a timer because it's like you set the timer and you start, so 5 minutes is really good because it's a small enough time to get moving, and it's a small enough time to make a change. So, and then it shuts up that inner critic. You never do that thing. It's like, well, I did 5 minutes of it. So now you can be quiet for a day. you know? So,
Mm-hmm.
how does that all sit with you?
It resonates. I think the biggest thing, well, for me is that self-awareness, is stopping, like even physically stopping and trying to be present and to be aware of the thoughts, because they're so automatic and we just go about life and have these thoughts, and it's sort of normal. And so it's really, yeah, stopping and being the observer. Okay, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? Where am I at? Yes, the War of Art, that Stephen Pressfield book, all about resistance, he talks
Mm-hmm.
about doing things for, he says, 2 minutes. So similar to your 5 minutes. And that, just do 2 minutes, set your timer, 2 minutes. And he said, more than not, you end up continuing with whatever you're doing, but there's no pressure on
No
yourself
pressure.
because it's only 2 minutes and then I can stop. And
Yeah.
he talks about sometimes he only did 2 minutes, but they say more often than not, he would then, because he would start to get in the flow of whatever task he was doing
Mm-hmm.
and continue.
Powerful. It's powerful. And sometimes, I also want to sort of preface this as well of like, if people are in a really deep state of struggle, sometimes you need help with this. And so there's many wonderful, compassionate counselors out there. If you're in the Alberta area, you can call 211 and they will connect you with the distress lines in your area. So you can talk to a living, breathing person about this if you're in a low spot. Do not be in a low spot for long. Depression is a life-threatening condition. And if you're dealing with any form of addiction or anything like that, you definitely need a support team. And the bigger and nastier the pattern, or how much it hurts and how painful it is, you need, big problems need a big team. We can absolutely help you with Reiki. And also, we've got lots of referrals for you for extra forms of support and care, because sometimes that is the thing. So if you're noticing you're really stuck in a big loop of resistance, sometimes your tiny action is texting a friend, is calling 211, is calling up your therapist and making an appointment, and just to go, I just need a little bit of help and care to get me through. And don't worry if that even feels like, if I can't do it myself, if I can't pick myself up by my own self, then I'm somehow not good, or, like avoid all of that. We need all kinds of forms of support and care. And that if you're in a big pattern of resistance that's causing a lot of damage in your life, then you need that support and care to help. That's actually just how you get better. And it's just like any other form of healing, support, and care. So if you broke your leg, you'd need a cast. Nobody would expect you to hobble around on a broken leg until it got healed magically. You know, you need help and support. And so we acknowledge that when it's a big physical ailment, but it's the same for anything like this. We need support. And sometimes you need the version of a mental cast, which might be getting the appropriate levels of neurotransmitters in your body, because that might be it. Maybe the resistance is actually a brain chemistry thing. And so you need to support your tender little brain, because you might need a little bit of a boost. But that isn't a failing, right? It's not that we're broken. It's just that some people's brains produce the right balance of neurotransmitters and other people's brains don't. It's fine. Just like some people's pancreas creates enough insulin and other people's don't. That's fine. We just work around it, and it is what it is. We'll just meet it all with gentleness and love, and then move forward. So I like to kind of put that out there for people. So doing that tiny little forward motion could come in a lot of forms. And it might be something you do yourself, but it also might be something that you do in the context of sort of your greater care team. So talking to your doctor, your therapist, a good friend. I could talk about this with hours. I could talk to you about all of this for hours, but then it ends up being, are we resisting something else?
Oh, interesting. One thing that I wanted to add is that learning to be okay with that very uncomfortable feeling. A while ago, I had a lot of resistance to something that I had to do. I could feel the anxiety in my body. I was crying while I was doing the thing, but I did it. And then afterwards, I'm like, okay, you know what? It actually wasn't that bad, which is often the case I find is once I actually do it, I'm like, oh, okay, it was really, why did I not do this like ages ago? Because it really wasn't that hard. But to, be okay, as I say, with that really uncomfortable feeling and sitting in that feeling and still doing the action. And I think what you said is so important is that self compassion. I think so many people lack that, where they're lovely people and they have so much compassion for other people and can hold space for other people, but it can be such a challenge to turn that inward and to have that loving self compassion for ourselves.
The tricksy way around that is that the more self compassion you have, it actually increases your compassion for others. So if you want to be a truly compassionate person, you must show yourself an equal amount of compassion. And it means that you can hold bigger space for people who are in your care. It's all the work.
All the work. And I've done that before too, where I have more motivation to help other people than to help myself. And realizing what you just said, that I can't help other people until I help myself. So because I have, my ego chattering and chirping in with all the resistance. But yeah, if I kind of turn it, it's like, well, I really want to help these other people. So I guess I better start with myself. So it's this really funny kind of mind trick that you can do.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I find that knowing that the two are connected, like we would never deprive anybody else of compassionate care. So we wouldn't deprive ourselves. So sometimes it's like even imagining you are your own pet, and that you are taking care of yourself the same way you would take care of a loved animal, right? Then you're taking care of yourself in the same way, or, caring for yourself the way that you had wished, maybe the big people in your world cared for you. You get to provide yourself that nurturing and that love. And it's actually the opposite of selfish. It is the most compassionate thing you can do for other people, because what you want for other people is for them them to love themselves and take care of themselves. And why don't they take care of themselves? Well, because it's all a big loop, right? So people will only do what we do, they won't do what we say. So if we want somebody to take care of themselves because we know, because we care, we love them, if we love anybody, if we care about anybody, you want them to do well. What if they're only going to start doing that when you start? And they pick up on this energetic wave of like your self care and compassion, you being gentle with yourself and nurturing yourself with truly joyful things is the energy that makes it possible for the other person to care for themselves. And now they're doing it, right? They're going to do what you do, not what you say. And so you have to lead the way, because if you're listening to this, you now know, right? You can't unlearn this thing you've just learned. So you now know that if you love another person, you must take care of yourself. And the more that they care about you, the bigger a requirement it is. It's not an optional thing, because if you go down, the whole ship goes down, right? And then those people might be stuck without you. And that's a nasty thing to do to people that you love, is to not take care of yourself.
I think you made a very good point that it's not selfish. I think a lot of people do view it as being selfish, that self care, that like radical self care.
What keeps you out of selfishness? First of all, people who are highly empathic and are devoted to others and not as much to themselves, you don't worry. If you're one of those people, you have to lean a really far way into self-care before it becomes selfish. Like what feels like leaning into selfishness is actually just coming into balance. It's because the scales have been tipped so far the other direction that you don't know what balance feels like anymore. So don't worry about that. The other thing is that what keeps us from selfishness is this idea of true compassion. So the kindness for yourself is on par with the kindness that's outside of you. So you don't want to diminish your kindness at all. You want to increase your kindness level. But if you're really kind to others and not kind to yourself, then you have to do the work to make it equal. And then what keeps us from selfishness is that we don't have more kindness for ourselves than we have for others. That's what keeps it in balance. So you're always striving for that balance of internal compassion being equal to external compassion. And that the two are linked together. They're not separate entities. And that generally what happens is as you raise up your inner compassion, your outer world compassion also goes up. Because now you understand, when you create an empathic, careful, kind space for your resistance, then you have more compassion for other people who might be in various forms of resistance. And so there's less judgment, there's greater understanding. You understand patterns of numbing and addiction because it's all a spectrum. You're not judging people who are getting hooked on things that you would never do. It's like you can understand that great pain requires a great pain reliever, and they're just trying to feel better, just like you're trying to feel better when you're watching another 1,000 hours of Netflix, like, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like that's just, it's the same energy. And when we can be compassionate for ours, it makes it easier for us to be compassionate for other people and hold them in that gentle light, which is better for us and it's better for them. So that's sort of where it all comes back to. So yeah, amazing.
I find that so many things that we do in order to heal, whatever that healing is, feels counterintuitive. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that feeling of it feeling counterintuitive is a form of resistance, but yeah, we
I
have
think so.
yeah. I'm just having an aha moment here that,
Yes, I love those.
yeah, oh, so interesting.
It is counterintuitive because it comes back to that, like the same mind that created the thinking pattern that keeps you in resistance can't be the same energy that gets you out of resistance.
Mm-hmm,
And what
mm-hmm,
makes sense to the resistant mind will not be the thing that gets you out of it. It will be counterintuitive to the part of you that is resisting. So it's actually good that that part of you is like, this makes no sense. But there's a part of you where it does make sense. It's like, if harshness is the pattern, then gentleness is the antidote. Because you've already tried harshness as the antidote to harshness, didn't work. More harshness. Who would have thought? Right. Right. Like, and so it's like, what if let's go to a giant limb and say the antidote is the opposite of, it's the nourishing thing, not the harsh thing, but not a numbing thing, but a true, deep, lasting, contented, joyful thing, a nourishing thing, a kind thing. So, you know, feeding yourself 20 bags of cookies is not a kind thing, but feeding yourself a delicious, nutritious meal is a very kind thing. And eating it to the point of maximum comfort, but not discomfort, that's kind, right? Like, to use that as an example. And so noticing, how can I add more kindness into my life? True, nourishing, simple joys, right? Like giving yourself space to walk outside in the sunshine, giving yourself space to drink water when you are thirsty, have a bath or a shower, taking that time to care for yourself, like simple, simple, simple things that have no negative side effect, right? Like there's no downsides to this. There's no, it'll cost me later. There are often things that are, no or low cost. They're within your realm to give yourself those things. And so if you can give yourself that comfort and care, you must. You must. And so that is nourishing. And that is the tiny little action that gets you out of the loop that's harming, you
mm-hmm,
know?
mm-hmm. So the answer to me is love. Love is the
Love.
answer to resistance.
It is. Absolutely. Love. Yeah. And if it's hard to access, go to people who love you, and then they will tell you, no, you're lovable. And you're like, oh, okay, maybe I am.
Mm-hmm,
To sometimes we need support to prop up that self-love,
mm-hmm,
and so we
mm-hmm,
can kind of have people in our lives that can reflect, mirror, and match that love. And even just asking that gentle question, if you loved yourself, what would be possible? If you truly loved yourself, what if you could love yourself the way the universe loves you, the way the divine loves you? What if you started loving yourself even just a fraction of 1% as much as the love of the entire universe, which is infinite and a lot and completely unconditional? If you could just crack the door open just a little bit bigger, what could be possible in your life? What could happen? What good could ripple out from that energy? It's massive. It's massive. And if that's the result, it doesn't take a lot of imagination to like get you to a space where like, well, that could change my whole life. That could heal so many things. I would just start doing, making, and creating the things that I need to do, make, and create. And I would share them with people, and I would, you know, go on more adventures, and I would just have more fun. And it would just be a lighter, easier, more carefree existence. I would deal with issues as they came up. It'd be fine. I'd coach myself through them, you know, and I'd get help and support when I needed. And it would just be a light, joyful, nice life. So if that's the natural extension of that little thought experiment, then isn't it worth trying?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't we, as a little assignment for anybody who might be listening to this point in the podcast, to just say, what if you just ran it like a little experiment? Let's just test and find out. For this next week, do 5 kind things for yourself every day. That's it. 5 kind, truly joyful, nourishing things for yourself every day, and then see what happens.
And I would like to add, because that might feel like a lot to some people, it can even be 1.
It could even be 1.
Start with 1.
And it could be 5 seconds of something nice.
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Just tiptoe into the self-love stuff. Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Angela. What an amazing chat. I love talking about all of these things. If any of you listening have any comments, we want to know, like, how did this all land on you? Please leave us a comment or a message and we'll get back to you. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us on the Luna Holistic Podcast. We're so grateful that you are here. If you've got a question, we'd love to hear from you. Go to lunaholistic.com/podcast, and we'll answer you in an upcoming episode. Be sure to subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And also, please rate, because you never know where your little 5 stars will go to shine light into somebody's heart today. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.